type of art do you believe draws people to the city, contemporary or traditional?
Well, I think you probably find that both do. But that would mainly be because you'd be dealing with two different kinds of groups of people. In fact, there are probably three core groups of people. People who are interested in just about anything, and they might be more likely to be drawn to more traditional forms of art. Then you might have your art-focused people. And then you've got another much younger group. And one of the things that's interesting about Melbourne is graffiti and graffiti-based art has become a bit of a thing, in the laneways in particular. And although the council's had an ambivalent attitude to it, it's become a kind of marketing tool almost. And Melbourne is really well known for street art. So there are kind of street art tourists as much as there are art gallery tourists. And the art gallery tourists will be broken up into ones who are interested in contemporary art and ones who are interested in more traditional forms of art.
Do you believe that some art in Melbourne being on the streets rather than in galleries would have a positive or negative impact on Melbourne City's economy?
I don't know whether it has a huge impact on the economy. Now, the problem you struck me, and I am like local government, very ambivalent about graffiti-based art. I have like three different attitudes to it. I have a kind of vaguely positive attitude to art pieces, that is things which are kind of semi-organised. I have a kind of supportive attitude to what I would call traditional political graffiti, of which there is very little now, but which there used to be a lot of. So there was, going back into the 70s and early 80s, there was a concerted campaign by graffitiists, a group called Bugger Up, Billboard utilising graffitiists against unhealthy products, who used to actually graffiti cigarette advertising billboards and worked. So you can see that, and sort of, graffiti that's got a political orientation, I think, is straight tagging. I have an aversion to, mainly because I really don't like spending 2 or 3 hours trying to remove someone's inane scribbly tag off the front of my house, which I've had to do on a couple of occasions. So that sets me against tagging, but I can see where the whole kind of scenario is coming from. In terms of the economy, it's probably no more of an impact than people coming through Melbourne and going down to the Great Ocean Road or going to St Kilda or doing anything else. It's just become an extra little thing that that Melbourne has become known for. Okay. Anyway, so.
Do you say that Melbourne City caters well for all forms of art?
I think so. I think in terms of its artistic culture, it's incredibly diverse. You have a very rich emerging art scene with a lot of small artist-run galleries. You have a fairly strong commercial scene, much stronger, for example, than your closest big city is Brisbane. Brisbane has a very, very limited commercial scene, which makes it much harder for younger artists to kind of get a footing and build a career there, whereas Melbourne has a much richer mix at that beginning stage. And in terms of its public museums, it has quite a range. So you've got everything from this gallery in Alarbri, which is pretty much a permanent hang. They don't change this much. They have another temporary exhibition gallery down in the foyer. Then you've got 3 or 4 university art galleries. You've got galleries linked to different council areas. So you've got local government, so they're spread out all over Melbourne. And then you've got the main National Gallery of Victoria, which is a double campus gallery.
Do tourists in Melbourne City, do they tend to view more traditional art or also go to street art?
Well, like I say, it's different groups for different things. And this is one of the things that's really important to get a grip on in relation to art and in relation to tourism. Tourists are not a uniform group. Different people do very different things. And I think in Melbourne, one of the things in Melbourne, for example, that we notice very strongly when you're living here is in January, when the Melbourne Open is on, suddenly we get a large number of people coming in to watch the tennis. So they're essentially tennis tourists, just as there are sporting tourists who come in for big games. People come from interstate to watch their Aussie rules matches and so on. And but art and culture plays a fairly significant part in that, and it's actively marketed. It's marketed both to the resident population, but also to visitors. And I'd say, depending on the age groups and interest groups, if you wandered through the National Gallery of Victoria, you would see people who clearly aren't from here, who are looking at stuff. And there we go. There are people wandering around looking now, and they may not be locals. So.
Do you believe that all street artists should be commissioned?
Again, that tackles my ambivalence about how you do things. For example, if one was a political graffitiist, which I wouldn't classify as a street artist, that would mean one thing. In other words, you'd be actually making political points and, in a sense, acting outside the kind of normal rules and regulations of what you should like. You're basically in competition with advertising in a way, but with political slang. When it comes to tagging, I don't think that's even what we're talking about. So when it comes to street art, I think there's probably a mixture of agreed sites, customary sites, places which have just been graffitied so much that that's what's happening there, and there's really, like, unless you get out there with some paint every day and paint over everything, you're not going to kind of stop it. And then there are commission things.
Do you think that art here in the city plays a big role in Melbourne's culture?
Yes, but Melbourne's culture, like, again, see, this is the thing you have to be really careful of. Culture is not a single thing. It's really kind of diverse. One of the things that's interesting, for example, in the art context, there is a very significant sport art prize in Melbourne that's actually run by the Ian Potter Gallery at Melbourne University. And that's partly because art is one thing, sport is another. And although you often think of them as not connected, in Melbourne they do, in really interesting kind of ways. There are a lot of artists who, people are kind of fanatical about Aussie rules and their teams, and they make art that kind of and they can connect. So there's, but I think overall, the way people perceive Melbourne's culture is impacted by both art and also by the kind of literary world as well. Melbourne is a city which has a strong kind of writerly tradition as well. It's the kind of place you can pick up books and you read about your own city, and I think that's important too. So there are kind of layers, and people's perception of Melbourne as a cultural city, I think, stems from its kind of rise in the 19th century to a city of wealth, where they really wanted to put a cultured city together and build things like libraries and universities and theatres and so on. And it's a city of that kind of scale. It'd be surprising if it didn't. Every city has a kind of culture. The question is, what role does art play in that? And that's a much kind of deeper kind of investigation. You need to kind of go digging around and find, as I say, there are people who walk the back streets of Fitzroy near where I live with their cameras, happily taking photographs of walls with graffiti and street pieces and so on. Those same people may or may not go to the gallery, but they're both part of the same kind of culture. It's just that it's sort of that slightly differently.
And in your opinion, what is the difference between street art and graffiti?
I think it's important to look at all three. They intersect in interesting ways, and these days in a city like Melbourne, you'll find the kind of street art piece-based work where people are work that will actually bleed over into the gallery world. So there's now a kind of link where people who start in street art can actually move into the gallery context and vice versa. And that kind of activity has been going on for a long time, not just in Melbourne but internationally. And there are some significant artists who rose to prominence in the 80s in America. One of them is a guy called Keith Haring. What's interesting about Keith Haring is that when Keith Haring came out to Australia in the early 1980s, about 82, he did a project with a tech college in Collingwood and painted a very large mural on a wall, and it's pretty much one of only about 20 or 30 murals by this artist that's still left around anywhere. it is now being preserved. So that's a kind of interesting thing. But that shows you there's a crossover between, because he did gallery art and other kinds of things as well, but there's a kind of crossover. So you now have kind of heritage
Yeah.
street art. And we have heritage street art in Melbourne in the same way as we have heritage neon signs, like the Skipping Girl sign. So we have heritage advertising sign, heritage graffiti, heritage buildings, but they all have their different colour layers.
And would you say that Melbourne is one of the most artistic cities in the world?
That I think is an imponderable, and I don't know how you'd make an assessment of that. Melbourne is certainly a city which is known for its kind of cultural life, and it's an attractant to artists and people who are interested in art. Whether it's a global art centre is another matter, and that has to do with how art moves about the world, where the art markets are, where the big museums are, where the huge populations are. Melbourne is certainly not New York, London or Paris.
No.
Okay, but in terms of the context of Australia, essentially it's a significant cultural draw card. And if you looked at it statistically, you'd probably find there was a slightly higher percentage of people with artistic occupations in Melbourne and in Sydney than there are in some of the other capital cities around the country. And so, but then you have to go to the Bureau of Statistics and find out, and that's really boring stuff that nobody likes doing except crazy people like me. Who in fact monitors the census for the changing populations of artists and stuff, but let's not go there. The statistical view of art, how many people go to museums, what do they look at, which museums do they go to find out the answers to those questions in a more definitive way, you would actually have to do a completely different set of questions, and you'd be having to survey people. So you'd be there with clipboards. So you've just been to the gallery, what did you come to look at? Or stopping people on the street, have you been to the gallery while you've been visiting? So you go to the airport, catching people as they're leaving and asking. And people do that kind of work. It's sort of survey-based cultural mapping, I suppose. But that's a different kind of thing altogether.